love the feeling of stitching by hand. It's such an incredibly tactile thing, and it takes time, and it does also demands a bit of attention. And this it does make me think about it a bit. Not just, oh, I love hand stitching. I would never give up my sewing machine. I absolutely love that one too. But the feeling of stitching by hand is just so very different. And I don't really know if it's because it takes time, that I kind of have to slow down for it. And we have lots of flies out here this time of the year, so I'll probably go waving about. Where was I going? Yes. Stitches take time, and it doesn't matter if it's a knit stitch, a crochet stitch, a sewn stitch. I mean, it could be one line of weft on a hand woven cloth. But it kind of makes me think that stitches are made of fabric and thread. But maybe they also kind of are made of time? Because we can see kind of the time it has taken to do something that is handmade. People who are crafting in some way. Some people, other people as well, but a lot of the time, people who know a craft can look at a piece and say, oh wow, that must have taken a lot of time. And doesn't that kind of mean that we see the time in the stitches? Kind of make the time visible? And then of course the next question is, does that mean that machines make the time invisible? I mean, even machine stitched or machine knitted projects take time, but not as much time as something handmade, of course. And if we go into the thought chain of machine stitched time things makes time invisible, what do we say about invisible stitches then? Because in a lot of different crafts there is this thing about, oh, but the stitches should be invisible. They should be so tiny that you can barely see them. And sometimes people want the invisible stitches because it'll make sure that you can see the fabric instead, or the stitches could take away from design. I get that, by the way, nothing wrong with that. But then it would also, in this specific thread of thought, be interesting to connect it to visible stitches makes time visible. I don't know. As usual, I really don't know. Well, that wasn't very successful. And stitches will always show the time it takes. As I said, even machine stitching takes time, just not as much. And that kind of also makes me think about the things that we mend and repair. And you can see the original stitches, the time that it took to make the garment or quilt or whatever it is, when you kind of made it from the beginning. Then you can see the layers of time when it's been mended. And I think that's kind of cool to see how someone's gone back to that specific piece to just make sure that the first time that it took to make it is not in vain. And then you can see the time it took to mend a piece or a darned sock or something like that. But then the next layer of time that you can see in a mended piece, I think, is also the time it now has left to live. Because we spend time mending it. It has even more time to live now. I think that's kind of cool. And we often say in this world, I mean, I'm very much guilty of this as well. Oh, I wish I could do that. I just don't have the time. And then I am surrounded in my home with very visible time in all of the products and things and quilts and blankets and stuff that I've made. And this, I don't have the time for that. That cycle, I've realized, is quite often ending up with me spending way too much time on my phone. I am trying to cut down on my screen time. Sometimes it works better than other times. And that is definitely time that is not visible. I think that being on my phone eats so much of my time that I could have spent creating something where my time will be visible afterwards. And it's I think it's interesting to compare what I am doing on my phone which is usually playing silly games. Um, and these games will be mostly quite repetitive. And I do it to relax. And then when I sit down and do some hand stitching, that is also very repetitive. And I do it to relax. After an hour on my phone, I have nothing but possibly a better high score. After an hour of hand stitching, I have something physical. And I think we need, or I am generalizing again, tend to do that. I believe that a lot of us people needs the repetitive slowness of something to relax. Because doing something repetitive and easy with our hands gives us time to think. And I believe that the difference between a repetitive phone game is still not as relaxing as a repetitive craft task. Because the phone is constantly bombarding us with flashes and colors and maybe music or sound effects. So I find it hard to believe that our brains can actually relax while playing those kinds of dopamine inducing games, I guess you would call it. Bollocks. Next try. So if spending time on my phone eats up my time without giving me anything, I'd like to say that spending time crafting actually gives me more time. Because I have time to think and I have time with myself. It can give me time with my family as well. I usually do some kind of crafting while helping out the kids with their homework. I can do some stitching or knitting while keeping my husband company in the garage or something. And this need to just be with ourselves, I think it is important. There is an absolutely amazing YouTube channel called The Last Homely House. If you haven't already discovered, Kate is her name. Lovely, lovely channel. And she's doing all sorts of crafts, but a lot of quilting. And she has this saying, um, get out of your head and into your hands. Which I've really taken to heart. And I figured out that, yeah, when I'm just feeling unsynced with myself, I don't really know what's wrong. but I can tell that I'm not really in harmony with myself. I usually need something that is off screen, that gives me something tactile, something to feel, to grab on, to hold. And I need an easy, repetitive task. Quite often hand stitching, but it could be knitting or it could be spinning, it could be lots of different things. And I think I figured out that a lot of the times when I'm feeling like that, it's because that I've had too much going on. Too much just from everywhere, either from work or being on the screen for too long, something like that. Hello, Mumu. How are you doing, God? Wanna come and say hi? Queen Mumu. Hello. So, going back to this, is a stitch made out of time partly? Since we invest so much time into, well, dear girl, your tail is a little bit in the way. Since we invest a lot of time into our handmade pieces, is it the actual time that we spend on the project that makes us value it more than if we just buy something? Or is it the price tag of the materials? I am leaning towards it being the time. That was spent so much time on this thing that I've actually built up a relationship with it. Or is that what you would say in English? I think so. We have a connection, me and the blanket that I've spent so many hours on. And that, of course, brings me into the next level. If I get really skilled at a craft and I don't have to spend as much time on it, it will still be very, very well made. But I might only need to spend half the time because of skills and techniques and stuff like that. Will it still be worth as much to me? I don't know. Mostly because I'm not that skilled at, at a specific craft. But it could be interesting to continue that chain of thoughts. And does that also mean that I shouldn't try to make my crafting as efficient as possible? I mean, I can really, really, really love and enjoy the process of making a thing. But sometimes I just want the project done. I just want that sweater or the project bag that I'm sewing. And if I then want to make the project as valuable as possible for me, how should I do that? Of course, it depends on what the goal of the crafting is and what kind of look I want from it. Of course, it's dependent on all of that. But from a time perspective, I think it's worth reflecting over. And as a crafting community, I've come upon all sorts of opinions. Whether it's, oh, you should never do shortcuts. Oh, well, that, for me, depends on what the shortcut is. And sometimes, of course, there are people who say, well, do whatever it is you want to do to make your hobby into what you want it to be, what kind of experience you want it to be. Which is definitely more into what I think we should have as a way of thinking about this. Oh, that wasn't very successful. Because we have to evolve our crafts. Because I think it's, first of all, it's the human thing to do, to explore and discover new ways of doing things. And that could definitely be finding more efficient ways of doing the crafting itself, new techniques and new tools, which in many cases will make us spend less time on a project. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing. But I think there is a risk of the crafting community, not everyone, absolutely not everyone, but some people, to say, well, I did it better because I spent more time on it. I didn't do the shortcuts. I spun the yarn for my sweater and then I knitted the sweater. And if that's what they want to do, absolutely go for it. I've hand spun yarn for skirts many times and I absolutely loved the experience. But it doesn't take away from the projects where I've bought fabric and sewed it on a machine. Though I do think that there is a bit of elitism in the crafting community sometimes. And then, is that because some people take pride into, oh, it took so many hours to make? Or is it because they didn't use shortcuts? I don't know. It's interesting because you can still see the time in all of it, just in different ways. And that makes me wonder if I choose to make a project and I am using faster techniques. Maybe I'm doing some of it by machine. Oh, excuse me, fly. Can I still mentally craft slowly? By really appreciating the fabric going through my hands, by being in the moment. Maybe it's kind of the flow state that is coming to us once in a while. But if I can create a project quickly, but mentally craft slowly, wouldn't that be a good way to still kind of create that connection to the project? I don't know, but let me know if you have an idea about it. I'll probably always come back to hand stitching once in a while. I so love the one stitch at a time. Where does the needle go down? Where does it come up? And just as knitting, you work one stitch at a time. Sewing, one stitch at a time. Nature works the same way. Oh, please, dear fly. Tree rings, one ring every year. Erosion chips away a little bit each time there's a flood. And in this modern, sometimes a little bit crazy world, we often try to do several things at once. Multitasking is definitely not a thing that we should aim for. And we have lost a lot of the connection to nature. And I think that maybe one small thing to get that connection back is to go back to do one thing at a time. Maybe by stitching, or maybe by just not eating in front of a screen every day. I don't know. It could be anything, but maybe that's a way to get the connection back again. I just want to come back once again to this idea of spending a lot of time on a project is what creates the connection to it. And I have a feeling that that is also why we can have such a hard time getting rid of a handmade project, even if it's too small these days, or the kids have outgrown the sweaters I knitted for them when they were babies. I've spent so much time with this garment or whatever it is. Maybe a little bit of the reluctance to get rid of it is a fear that if I get rid of the piece, I'll lose that time? Maybe. That is a very unfinished thought for me. Is it the actual memories of the piece that makes it important, or the time I've spent with it? Or maybe it's because I've spent so much time on it and with it that I have time to create those memories. What do you think? Can time and memories be the reason that we find it hard to get rid of stuff? Or is it just the memories? Let me know.